Now, before we go through the logistics of this, and I put this off to the end because most of you who've had any economics have seen the logistics of this already. As I mentioned, the mainstream presents something very similar, looks very similar, especially at the principles level, to what we do. Why? Because you understand it, right? Because it seems perfectly reasonable and logical to argue this way. We value certain things as an end, ends that we have, and then we perceive that there are certain means by which these ends can be attained. So I'm hungry, I want a ham sandwich, so I'm willing to buy the ham sandwich, I pay a certain price, and price is formed by the interplay of supply and demand. All right, so we're more concerned with kind of this fundamental, unseen meaning that we bring to this process, and not so much the kind of superficial logistics of how it works. Okay, so let me provide you with just an overview. This is the context within which price theory, as developed by Menger and Mises and Rothbard, is placed. And this is what Mises calls appraisement. And this gets back to this problem that I mentioned at the very beginning. Okay, so up to this point, we've seen how you and I, in our own actions, as we choose, economize. So, we choose to go to a particular conference because we think the value will be greater than our other options. We choose chicken wrap for lunch because we think that's better than the hamburger, and so on and so forth, right? We're constantly economizing in all of our actions according to our preferences. But the problem in the social structure is we have a division of labor. And so I'm not the one who's producing the things that I will consume, unlike when I'm just thinking about my own private actions, right? Or if I were Robinson Crusoe, stranded on a desert island somewhere. And the same with everyone else. Everyone is producing for the consumptive ends of other people. So in order to economize the production decisions, each producer has to have a way of objectively comparing the value that some consumers have for certain lines of production with the value that other consumers have for different lines of production that each producer could engage in with his factors of production. Okay, so this is the problem, right? This is the context within which price theory is developed. This is sort of the big problem that the price theory is designed to solve, or that does, in fact, solve. Okay, so first let's just walk through the argument of why valuation, as we've described it so far, cannot solve this problem. Why? In other words, the problem, once again, is we want to have economizing production decisions in the division of labor. Why can't we just do this the way we make all of our decisions? Through subjective valuation. Now, there would seem to be two options here that we could imagine. And if you want to connect this with things that you've read, what I'm speaking about here, of course, is the problem of economic calculation in socialism. This is the particular context within which these ideas were developed. Okay, so there are two possibilities, right? We could have a third party do this. We could have a third party value things in his own mind. We could have central planning. A third party values all factors of production, assesses the value of all consumer possibilities, all consumer goods. Would it be possible for a third party, a dictator, a central planner, to economize all of the uses of resources in society on the basis of his own valuations? Can he economize for all of us? Can he give us what we value most highly, which is what we're doing when we choose in our own actions, right? Okay, well, clearly he can't, right? And the problem is the subjectivity of value, right? The problem is if he's going to, let's say, I like chocolate ice cream, you like vanilla. And we have the central planner has to decide the ice cream producer, he's going to decide for the ice cream producer. He has scarce factors of production. He can only produce either the chocolate for me or the vanilla for you. He has to choose between it. Well, if he's going to choose on the basis of, objectively on the basis of my value being greater or less than your value, he would have to be able to rank order in his own mind our valuations. You would have, okay, well, surely he can't do this. My valuation is locked in my mind, your valuation is locked in your mind. So there isn't any way for a third party to come up with a social scale of valuations. By the way, politicians claim to be able to do this all the time, right? Obama says we're going to subsidize hybrid engines and automobiles, or we're going to build wind turbines or whatever, because this is the most valuable thing to do. This is all just bunk. That's all just nonsense. These are nonsense statements. Politicians are in no position to weigh the subjective values of different people in their minds, right? They're not able to say, if we transfer the resources away from other uses into building windmills, that the value that's created there is greater or less than the value that's given up over there by these consumers who have resources transferred away from them. They can't tell that subjectively, right? No one can. This is inherent in the subjectivity of value. Now, the only other way to do this would be to cut out the central planner and we just do it by plebiscite, right? We just do it by vote, democracy. We just at least I can experience my own valuations and you can experience yours. And maybe we can just set them against each other and negotiate who has the higher valuation. But again, you see that's completely impossible, right? It's totally impossible. We cannot objectively compare these valuations. They're locked in our minds. We can negotiate between each other and come up with a settlement, but we'd never know if it were economizing or not. We're in exactly the same position as the politician who just coercively transfers resources. We have no idea of the valuation. Well, with coercion we can say the valuation is lower, but my general point is we can't compare these valuations. Okay, so we can't solve the problem of which line of production gives us the higher value to people subjectively. Neither can we solve the other economizing problem, right, which is if we want to produce a given thing, we want to do it in the lowest cost way. We can't solve this either by valuation. Again, if the central planner wants to decide on the basis of his own subjective valuations, which is the lowest cost way to provide electricity, then in order for him to do this personally, he would have to engage in every activity in the entire division of labor. He would have to be the coal miner, so he can assess subjectively what that subjective value is to him. Then he would have to do the same thing for an electric engineer and a turbine construction guy, and then every other activity in the division of labor. Again, this is clearly impossible. That's why we call it the division of labor. That's why we specialize, right? Precisely because we can't do everything. And so no particular person is in a position to have done everything in the division of labor so that he can say, I know exactly in my mind what the subjective value is of each of these different activities. So if I assign some labor activity into being doctors and not lawyers, I know exactly what value I'm transferring out of one thing and into another. Okay, so the central planners could never do this. Again, that just leaves us with ourselves to do this among ourselves. But here again, we see the subjectivity of value would not allow us to objectively make a comparison. If we needed, for example, one more person to be a coal miner, and the decision came down to just you and me, so everyone else had been assigned to their jobs by some process, well, I would vociferously object. I would say, look, the opportunity cost to me being a coal miner is enormous. You give all these great lectures, all these students who depend on me and so on and so forth. And you would say the same sort of thing. You would say, no, wait a minute. Someday I'm going to be a famous entrepreneur and I'm going to be, the next Steve Jobs, and society would lose all this value if I'm sent down into the coal mine. No, we can't, right? We can't subjectively make these comparisons. We would get nowhere. We could make a decision, but it wouldn't be objective, right? It would just be somehow we compromise. You'd bribe me or something, but this would not be objectively comparing the values. So